National Academy of Construction Ask Me Anything of the spring 2020 semester. My name's Keith Molenaar, and I'm a member of the National Academy of Construction and a professor here at the University of Colorado Boulder. The NAC was established to recognize our industry leaders. An important part of the Academy is to provide a network and linkage between the past and present participants in the industry. As such, we've established this NAC AMA to help transfer knowledge to the next generation of our construction leaders, which is you here with us today. So thanks for joining us. The format of our AMA is simple. Our speaker is going to make a short presentation about their career and give their perspective on the construction industry. If you've not already, and I see we have about 50 questions already in, but if you've not already, please email your questions to NACAMA, so it's just one string there, NACAMA@colorado.edu. One student will win a gift of $500, and we'll announce that at the end of the presentation. So I am thrilled today to introduce Deborah. She goes by Deb Grubbe, and she's it's a little bit long intro here, but I really want to take the time to do this, Deb, so I hope you don't mind. She is currently owner and president of Operation and Safety Solutions, LLC. It's a company that specializes in improving firms' safety and operational performance. She has a wide client list that spans from chemical, oil and gas, construction, healthcare, power, and aerospace industries. She's had a very illustrious career. She's the former vice president of group safety for BP, which had its safest 2 years during her tenure. So thank you for doing that, Deb. She was trained in characteristics of safe operations during her 27-year career at DuPont, where she held corporate director positions in operations, engineering, and safety. What might that mean? It means assignments that include capital governance, project management and execution, process safety and risk management, manufacturing management, organizational change, leadership, and human resources. Quite a repertoire there. Additionally, she's serving as advisor to some startup companies in Philadelphia and London. I also want to point out for 9 years, she served as a member of the NASA Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel, which was a consultant on the safety culture to the Columbia Space Shuttle Accident Investigation Board. She's also worked with the U.S. Army to support demilitarization of the U.S. chemical weapons stockpile, where she focused on safety and the demolition of agent processing facilities. She's held a lot of service positions here. She's actually stepping in as 2020 President-elect and a member of the Board of Directors of the American Institute of Chemical Engineers. She's the former chair of the Institute for Sustainability within that organization, where she led a global effort to establish professional sustainability credential. She lectures frequently on project management, leadership, safety, and ethics, and is writing books on process safety, engineering, professionalism, and her career as well. So I'm going to embarrass you just a little bit more with a few of your awards as well, but I did want to note that Deb's been the first woman and youngest elected member to the State of Delaware Professional Engineers Registration Board. An important part of our industry is the professional engineering registration, and she served as the chair of the Law Enforcement and Ethics Committee. She was born in suburban Chicago, and attended Purdue University and the University of Cambridge in England. She's a registered engineer in Delaware and a chartered engineer in the United Kingdom. She's a fellow of both the Chemical Engineering Institution and the Institute of Chemical Engineers, and of course here with us today because she's a National Academy of Construction member since 1993. So Deb, thank you for joining us. We just could not be more thrilled, and we'd love it if you could just talk to us a little bit about a reflection of your time in the industry and a little bit on your career.
Well, thank you, Keith. Everybody's seen some slides. I've had a really wonderful career, and it's not over yet. With an opportunity to work construction work in the field for 5 years, and then do a fair amount of design work, and have an opportunity to learn the project management system, literally from the ground up. And you can see from some of these slides, I've had an opportunity to work in design on some pretty interesting chemical processes like the manufacturing of Kevlar and Tyvek. I've led global manufacturing operations for 4 years when I was with DuPont, and it's been an interesting time because when you're working manufacturing, you have to also work on maintenance and construction, which is something that's really very important. I have had most of my time, I've never really had a sales and marketing assignment, but I feel like I've been doing sales and marketing most of my career because you have to sell ideas. And been very fortunate to have had some really good development and have had a lot of people over the course of my career help me. And I feel like it's very important to give back. And that's part of the reason why I'm here tonight, is to offer, pay it forward, so to speak, with each of the folks that are going to be listening or are listening tonight. And I hope to answer questions. And so I'd rather just get started with some of those questions, if that's okay, because I know you have a lot of them. Yeah,
you bet. Deb, and please, everyone, continue to send in your questions. We won't be able to get to them all, but we'll get to as many as we can. A lot of really good questions coming in. Kind of have them organized a little bit in just your personal management approach, and some around safety, and then some around the general construction industry. So why don't we talk a little bit about safety, if we could start there, and we'll spend some time there. Does that sound
Sure.
good? Okay.
That sounds great.
So Colton asks a question: how do you make the trade-off, or the what he called a constant battle between cost and safety on a project? So how do you balance those two things?
Well, the reality is that safety is not a cost. Safety is really an investment, and that's how good construction leaders think of safety. Because the studies have shown that, Colton, for every dollar that you spend in safety, you get a return of $2 to $4 in, just avoidance of problems and avoidance of additional cost. And that could include everything from injury and workers' comp costs to shutdowns due to inspections because you've had some bad things happen. And so I think you have to approach it as not a trade-off. I'd offer you to think about it a little differently. And I think too many people see it that way. They see safety as a cost, when in reality, safety is an investment. Additional studies have shown, and this is one reason why I think the smarter companies are really stressing safety, is that, and construction companies too, is that a good safety process, and let's just sort of, I'm a half Italian, so I use my hands to talk. A really good safety process encourages you to think and to plan in exquisite detail. That level, once you've trained your brain to approach problems and to think at the level of detail that you need to do something safely, to do any job safely, once you've finished that, and once you've trained your brain to think that way, your brain will think that way all the time. And so what you end up with is a really good thought process for all the problems that you approach. And so what people see is that cost improve, meaning costs go down, quality goes up. If you're making a product, your quality goes up, your reject rate goes down. Generally, because that's happening, morale of the workforce goes up because the company's making more money. So I can just tell you that safety is something that it's a lever that extends through the whole aspect of the enterprise.
That's a wonderful question, really, that system level approach and thinking of it holistically. There's a couple questions dealing with safety culture. I'm going to come back to that. Allie's asking a question more at the project manager level, so that kind of ties in here. But Allie's asking, as a project manager on a construction site, how much responsibility do you have for the safety of the workers in the workspace?
Well, if I'm the owner project manager, I'll just say it that way, because there's different kinds of project managers. If I'm the owner project manager, I have the ultimate accountability for safety, even though those people don't report to me, Allie. And that's because I'm the one that sets the tone. I'm the one that puts the requirements in the contract. I'm the one that enforces the contracts. And I am the one that sets the example on the site. So my staff, me and my staff are accountable for setting the tone. If I'm the construction project manager, it's the same thing, except for the people who report to me. I have to get my alignment with my boss back at the home office and to the owner's organization to make sure that that fits. And so it's absolutely critical. The safety role or safety on a job is not the job of the safety person. That's the biggest important. If you can remember one thing from my comments tonight, that's what I would offer to you. Is safety is not the job of the safety person. Safety is a line management job, and it starts with the person at the top.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, Ben is asking then, and this goes to right along those lines, what are the trends you're seeing with respect to developing a safety culture through training, policies, and leader engagement?
Well, I would say that smart policies and leader engagement are absolutely essential for culture, for a good safety culture, Ben, for that very reason. Safety culture can be very easily defined as something, or it's what you do when people don't watch you. And so if no one's watching you, how do you behave? Do you do it right, or do you take shortcuts? And I think that is a key aspect of it. The other piece of it is that tone at the top sets the culture. And so whoever is the head of the organization has that as part of their job. We used to say that, the CEO is literally the person who is the chief safety officer for the company, because it all ends up there. And unfortunately, that's been true. All you have to do is take a look at various incidents that have occurred over the years, and you'll see that it generally points back to the top of the organization.
Ben had a follow-up question here too. I'd be interested in your answer. He's asking from a leadership perspective, what have you seen as being successful in terms of one, offering praise versus offering punishment when safety incidents occur?
Wow, great question. That's a hard one to answer because it's situational, Ben. I would offer this. Safety is a unique blend. Good safety is a unique blend of the application of carrot and stick, to simplify it. Yeah. But the caveat is that not all situations are the same. So the carrot, so it's never 50% carrot and 50% stick. It might be 90 carrot, 10 stick. It might be 10 carrot, 90 stick. You don't know until you understand the situation, the history of what's gone on, the history of the individuals involved, what level of training they have had, what level of, how is their supervisor, where was their supervisor at the time of the incident, what did the supervisor instruct, or how did the supervisor instruct them to do the job, how are they trained, etc. So all those become factors. What time of day it is, when it occurs. So many serious incidents have their initiating points between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., at least in the chemical process industries. I can tell you that that's, one time when you never ever try to start up a facility as an example, because humans just don't, we don't think well between those hours generally, even if we're awake and we have gotten enough sleep. So that's, I don't want to get too technical, but that's just the reality of the human organism.
Right. Let's stay on the safety topic here, if you don't mind, for a few more minutes.
Sure.
Helen asks, what would you say some of the emerging challenges are facing safety in the construction industry? And she's also curious if you see these challenges changing with the use of technology.
Yeah, Ellen, yeah, absolutely. Technology is changing things, because now with a tablet or an iPhone or something, you can code areas, you can find out what is the history of safety on this piece of equipment or in this area of the facility. You have instant access to weather issues, because weather can sometimes cause serious safety issues. So technology and drones, the ability to survey systems with drones, to use ID to find people in a serious incident. If everybody wears an ID, you can scan the area. You can find where people are very quickly. And so the technology, that's just 3 examples of how technology is positively affecting safety. We have to, though, make sure that there's one thing technology can't do, and is it can't lead people. It can help inform people, but it doesn't set policy, it doesn't set examples. It just helps gives us information. So I think that's one aspect of it. I think and the other thing that technology is helping with, that I think it will continue to help with, it has already, I think, to some degree, is that, we've been struggling in the United States with multilingual construction sites. And technology is going to be, and has already helped make that communication process much better. And I think, as I look forward to the future, owners are always going to be pressed for time and schedule, especially if they don't do good planning. And it's hard sometimes for owners to do good planning. And so there's always going to be a time crunch. I think it's important for construction people to do what is right, and to give the owner your best estimate of what the issue is. And don't tell the owner what they want to hear. Tell the owner what they need to hear. As an owner, I may not like that right up front, but I would tell you that I respect that. And that's usually the people who will tell me what I'm about ready to do wrong before I do it, are the people that I want to have around me. And I actually would pay a premium. And I know, companies that I've worked with have paid premiums for people who will tell them the truth. And so I offer that just as a thought. Now that's getting into other subjects, but I think when it comes to safety, it's the same issue. I want contractors who can tell me the truth, because many times when someone gets hurt when a contractor gets hurt on a job, from an owner standpoint, I had a part in that. And so I have to go back and look at my systems and fix them so that we don't hurt anybody else.
And thank you for sharing that. It also leads, Michael's asking, what steps do you take when investigating an accident? So you were just talking about a little bit about that, right?
Sure. We can go through that a little bit. Michael, I think the first thing you do, depending on what the incident was, is you have to have a team to do the incident investigation. So sometimes it's a team that's right there. And if the organization is at a sophisticated level, a reasonably sophisticated level, it should be able to do its own incident investigation. I don't like to use the word accident, because that starts to look like an act of God, and we can't prevent act of gods. But I know instances where if you did some planning, you would have been able to identify the issue in advance and be able to get it done. But anyway, so first you need a team. Sometimes if it's a real serious incident, the team has to come from outside of the organization, because especially in a fatality, sometimes the government will even require it, and the government may be one of the additional teams that's going to do their own investigation. So there's owners' investigations. The contractor may choose to do an investigation. If it's a contractor that's injured, the government may choose to do an investigation, and that's both local, state, and federal, depending on the size of the incident. And there's a number of steps to it. Generally, one, you try not to disturb the site. You first make sure that you get people medically taken care of and treated if that's required. Sometimes there's incidents where people don't get hurt, and it's a near miss or a near hit, as some people call it. And you will go and you'll basically start through a very regulated investigative process where you look and you keep on asking why, till you get to what is sometimes called in the industry root cause. Sometimes there's multiple root causes, and you have to, you drill down as far as you can with the information that you have and that you can find. And that's really the best way to do it. And you find out where things got messed up. And usually they pop out. The problem that I see in investigations, and let me just end it this way, Michael, is the saying that many firms don't go far enough. And this gets to the point where it's one of my sort of personal professional pet peeves. I also am, I'm a chemical engineer, so I'm really not trained in safety that much. I received all my safety training at work, and I have to tell you, probably a little bit of it at home. My father was an electrical lineman for Commonwealth Edison in suburban Chicago, and now it's called Exelon. And I will tell you that at 6 years of age, and I'm an only child, I realized that my father could die at work. And that was a pretty scary feeling when you realize that your dad didn't work safely, he wouldn't come home. So I am, there's no secret that when I worked for DuPont, I was the operations level sponsor for the corporate electrical safety team, because I have a large passion for electrical safety. And for any of the double E's or that might be out there in the audience today, I have a big passion for that. And I'll give you my safety tip for the day right now. And then I'll go back to the question. The safety tip is, and this is my dad's, he said, always treat electricity with great respect. You never know you're missing it until you need it and you don't have it. We take it for granted. And when it comes to electricity, you can't see it. You generally can't smell it. If it's burning something, you smell that, but you don't smell the electricity. You definitely can't taste it. You sometimes can hear it, but generally not. And you damn better well not touch it. And so that's just a perspective around it. And always pretend that it's there until you know for sure it's not, because you have tested it. And so I'm probably the only person that left home with an electrical tester. But anyway, where's my passion for safety? It comes from my dad. My reason for being safe is that I really think it's good business. And I think that the problem is that companies do not spend enough time actually going deep enough to find out the real causes of it. And so they keep on having repeat incidents because either they don't go deep enough or they're bad on the execution of the fix.
Yeah, thank you. So I have to ask a follow-up on this, and this is for me.
Oh, this is the ringer question now, huh?
No, just along the investigation. I know the Columbia accident affected a lot of us. And I was just curious if you could share a little bit about your role there and looking at safety culture and what you learned from that experience.
Wow. I don't know how to encapsulate it so it doesn't take up the full time.
Yeah.
I would offer that there are so many parallels between Challenger and Columbia. It is eerie and scary. It basically said, and I love the NASA organization, they do difficult things, but there are so many failure modes in both Challenger and in Columbia. They didn't listen to the experts. Why would you pay engineers good money to give you an opinion and then have the managers overrule them on both occasions. On both occasions, the managers overruled the recommendations of the engineers. It makes no sense. So if you have a technical workforce and you're paying them to give you advice and you're the boss, you better listen to their advice. That's just common sense. For the manager to think, well, I'm smarter than the engineer who deals with the problem every day, that's, you know, that's fool's play. That's number one. Number two, if there were communication breakdowns, and the engineers were sending emails to each other, they weren't sending emails to people whose decision really needed the people who were making the decisions. So that's a problem. So if you're a head knocker and you don't have a good relationship with your technical organization, that's a problem. And so, and that happened in Challenger, and it also happened in Columbia. There were some experience issues in Columbia too, without getting into names and positions. There were people who were young. I mean, I remember a conversation that I had with Sally Ride. She was a member, she was the only member of the person who was on the Rogers Commission for Challenger, and she was on the CABE for Columbia. And she made a comment that the mission manager went on vacation in the middle of the mission, because I had said, well, when the shuttle goes up, it's sort of like when a refinery goes into a turnaround, right? You know, there's all vacations are canceled. Everybody knows what they have to do. It's scheduled down. The work is scheduled down to the hour in the shift. You know, the ballet has started, so to speak. The production is on. And she looked at me and she said, not this time. She said, the mission manager went on a vacation.
No.
And I said, well, why not? And they said NASA had lost track of what they were doing. They were sending a bunch of people into an area where there's zero G, you know, absolute zero temperatures in a spacecraft. And she looked at me and she said, this was a routine mission. I said, are there such things as routine missions? And yeah, this time there was. I said, well, what's routine? She said, well, there was no spacewalk, there was no rendezvous, there was no satellite launch out of the shuttle bay, there was no, you know, construction on the space station. It was just go up, fly around a few times, do a few experiments, and come back. So how could anybody get hurt then? And I sat there and I went, oh, geez, you know, we lost track of what we were really doing.
Yeah.
It's perspective. So you always want to have the naysayers around if you're making decisions. I'll shut up. That's a great question. Thanks.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I know that's a really large task, and thank you for taking it on. And I got to add one more thing. Yeah.
One more thing. When I was growing up in Addison in Lombard, Illinois, I never dreamt that I would have an opportunity to give guidance to the kinds of people that sat on that panel.
Yeah.
And that was a career-changing opportunity for me. I have to thank both DuPont and BP for allowing me to do it over a 9-year period where I had a change of employers. But I must tell you one thing. 7 mommies and daddies had to die so I could have that opportunity. And there's 7 families out there today that really wish that would have never happened. And that's what gave me my opportunity. So I think it's really important to remember that, and I have to offer John Sullivan, who is the Chief Security Officer at BP, a shout out. He told me, he said, I don't envy you. And I looked at him, I said, what do you mean, John? And he said, we ended up in this conversation because we had the same birthday. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, he said, if someone gets kidnapped, we can pay a ransom and recover them. If we spill something, we can clean it up as best we can, and nature will take care of it because the earth is relatively resilient. If we hurt someone, we can generally fix them, you know, through medicine and all that. He said, but we haven't yet figured out how to raise the dead.
Yeah.
And that really, never forgotten that comment.
Well, thank you again for doing that, and thank you for sharing it with us. I think it really, there are a lot of parallels with the construction industry. What we do is very complex, and people are at risk, and we can never lose sight of the fact that it is complex and people are at risk. So, yeah, thank you. Let's switch off safety and talk a little bit about just a lot of questions about how you get things done. A lot of students are curious. So Colton asked just a question here. How do you organize your schedule so you can effectively take care of all your separate projects?
I work to deadlines, Colton. I look at the level of work that has to go on, and I find myself when I don't have when I have a client and I'm working with the client comes first. After that, all the volunteer work, which is real work, but a little more fun. Clients are fun too, but the volunteer work's a little more fun. That works on deadline, and it also works on how complex the task is. So if it's a very complex task that requires more thought, I actually do start on it a little earlier. But as Keith and Jane had an experience today where it took me longer to do the slides than I actually thought it was going to take me to do the slides. I started yesterday figuring it would take me about 3 hours, and 3 hours into it still wasn't enough time for me to do those slides because I hadn't quite put it all together like I thought it needed to be. So I'm my own worst enemy there. So I took some extra time this morning to clean up the slides and got them to them a little later than I expected. So the good news was it was still on time, but it wasn't what I had promised. So I think there's usually some forgiveness there between people, but when you have a hard deadline, you got to start soon enough. And I keep a lot of notes. That would be another thing.
Good, good. Haley asks, what's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part of my job right now, and this gets to some of Colton's question, is trying to balance everything appropriately. And that gets to spending the right amount of time. The great equalizer in life is that we all have 24 hours in a day. And it's how we spend those 24 hours that makes the difference. And it's important to realize that you have to make time, people in your life that help you and take care of you, you also have to give back to them. This is not always about me, me, me. So you have to find a way to balance the time with your significant other, your parents, your kids, that kind of thing. You have to keep that all balanced. And that's the hardest thing for me, is making the time. And so sometimes I make my own pressure by not doing something I thought I would do and go spend time with someone that I love that needs attention at the moment. I have my mother's going to be 90 in June. And I'm blessed to have her. She's still got all her faculties and she still drives a car. And I love Florida. And my mother takes a lot of time because she's not as mobile as she used to be. She can still be mobile when she wants to be, but I have to help her out every once in a while. And thank God for Amazon is the only thing I'd say.
Well, thank you.
And Instacart, I should say, for groceries.
Jesus asked a similar question, but more about the industry and kind of on the opposite side here. So what's the best part about the construction industry?
Oh, I'm the kind of person that I just like to see the results of my work every day. When DuPont put me in a construction job, now I'm going to date myself. It was 1980. And DuPont approached me and they said, we want you to be a guinea pig. And that's literally the word they used. We want to try putting a woman in construction. And we want to see how well you do, quite frankly. And if it doesn't go well, you call us and we'll pull you out. No harm, no foul. But we want to, you know, open this field up for women more. And I said, well, okay, sure. And I loved it. And I loved it so much that I stayed in it. And that really shocked a lot of people. And what I found about me was I had had summer jobs in research, and this is not a knock at Keith, but different, and Keith and professors, but different people have different joys and different itches that have to be scratched. And I had 2 summer jobs in research. One doing biomathematical research on wounded aortic and ventricular dog tissues, basically dog hearts. And the other one was dealing, and that was, and then the other one was dealing with fouling of heat exchangers. And I wrote reports, and I have a paper and all that, and everybody, and it's like, does anybody ever read it? You know, kind of thing. And so when I got construction and work, and I said, wow, I said, I can actually now go buy a building and say, I built that. And I can show you where the problems were in that building too. In fact, I got a phone call about 7 years after we finished the big life sciences laboratory, and someone called me up and said, blah, blah, blah. Remember the window walls on this building? I went, yep. And I said, are they leaking? And he went, yep. Do you know anything about them? I said, sure do. I can tell you exactly where I bet the leak is. He said, yeah, he said, that's exactly where the leak is. And so we ended up solving the problem. But that's the beauty of that job, is that I loved it because I got a performance review at the end of every day. And that just really, that sort of, and when you screwed up big time. That's the other piece of it. So you have to find your bliss, so to speak, and I found my bliss.
Great. I love that answer. Thank you. And Anthem has a question here. What is I love this question too. What has the construction industry taught you that you could never learn anywhere else?
Ooh, great question. I've never been asked that question before in my life, Anthem. You get a prize. The thing that it taught me was that if I was respectful to people, I could still be myself. I didn't have to pretend that I was someone I was not.
That's great.
So I could get angry with someone, or I could ask someone a pretty pointed question. And as long as I did it respectfully, people went, yeah, okay, we know why she's doing that. People were just down to earth because it's an industry that is so important to any nation's development and is so dangerous and so complex, because the job changes all the time. Construction is like the manufacturing of engineering, building something, no matter what you're building. And manufacturing is you make the same thing day after day after day. So you're trying to do the same thing all the time. In construction, the job changes as you move along. And that makes the job more complex. And so that's the thing that I liked about it, is I could be myself and tell, and you know, if I wanted to get angry, I could get angry. In an office environment, people don't like you getting angry.
Yeah.
You know, there's cultures. And so it's that, you know, I liked it.
Good. Yeah, it's all about teams and people in the construction industry. It really is.
Yep.
Well, wonderful. We're starting, time's flying. We're starting to get close to the end of our time together here. So a lot of folks are asking about how to get started in the industry, and you know, you have such a wealth of experience. They're all kind of looking at the first step here. So let me ask you a couple questions around that line.
Okay.
How can, let me see here. Someone's looking at 2 internships, and this is Carl. What should Carl consider when choosing between internships?
I'll just tell a little story on myself. When I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I had 17 job offers.
Wow.
That was when there were very few. I graduated when, you know, there was not very many women graduating. So yeah, I'm old. But I would offer that I picked a company that was aligned with my personal values. And so, Carl, you will be happiest in the environment and you will do work best in an environment that's sort of simpatico to your personal values.
That's an excellent answer. Yeah, and it's, how do you find out about a company's values?
Well, I think the first thing you do is you go check the website.
Yep.
The good news is that the website is generally the words. Then what you want to do is you want to go and ask, if during an interview process, ask some questions about what are the values and see if the people can recite to you the values that are listed on the website. If they can, that tells you that they talk about them inside the company, because you can't write enough procedures for everybody to follow the rules. You can't write enough rules. And that's also a waste of time. So what you do is you get thinking adults and you give them latitude, because the best way to get jobs done are to give people as much responsibility as they possibly can take. And I think that, and give it to them as soon as they look like they can handle it. And that's how you get satisfied employees. That's how you get people to live out the values, and they'll live them out because they agree with those values. They should also be looking at you as what are your values and how does your values fit into their culture, because values help form the culture.
Great.
And so I would make sure that you keep the culture, and you go look at the culture and see if the values manifest in the culture during your interview day. And if they don't, then, and you have two offers, then I would pick the one that best matches, and where it best matches you and where it best matches what they actually do. Because it's not what they say, it's what they do.
Great, thank you. Abby was asking a little bit about your experience as a female. You've mentioned it a few times, being in the construction industry. So where do you feel you've made a lasting impact as a female, and what should females in our construction industry look forward to?
Well, I don't know if I've made a lasting impact. So I would say this. I am, over the course of my career, yes, I come born into a female type package. But I will tell you that my bosses and my colleagues, the package is just that. It's how you use the gray matter between your ears that really matters, and how you're able to articulate that to others, and how you treat others with respect, namely with respect. And so my sense of did I ever call attention to myself as a woman? I tried not to, because I wanted them to see me not as a woman. I wanted to have my colleagues see me as a great engineer. And if they saw me as a great engineer, then the rest of my career was going to take care of itself. So that's how I worked it. Has that helped me or hurt me? I will tell you that being a female, or being a minority or a female in an environment where there's a lot of people that are different than you, I call that a sword that has two edges. It cuts both ways, which means that it's helped me over the course of my career. I'm absolutely certain about it. It's also hurt me over the course of my career because I am different and I don't fit the norm, and that's okay. I'm not worried about, there are always going to be greater and lesser people than me. And there are people that are more competent than I am. And so I think it's very important to recognize that, and someone said, well, you know, that's not fair. And, you know, and I can I can feel that coming back. And my view would be, I don't know about your mom, but my mom told me that life's not fair. And I'll just tell you right now, life's not fair. The question is, when someone knocks you down, how do you respond? If you feel you've been wronged, how do you respond? Do you become a victim and act like a victim? Or do you say, where could I not have measured up? Do a self-analysis, stand up and get on the horse again as soon as possible. That's the measure of a successful individual, because we're all going to have failures in life. I think the challenge is to try to respond quickly and give yourself a hard look when something, you know, wrongs you. And I'll offer this as a viewpoint. I can look over my 40-year career, and I can tell you that if I look at the 3 instances where I had difficulties, let me just say it that way, in my work situation, I can tell you that at the root of 2 of the situations that I'm thinking about, both of them were women that were jealous and were instigating behind my back. It was not men. So don't think that the enemy is a guy, because first of all, there are no enemies. Your worst enemy is yourself. And so with that, I probably should shut up.
I really appreciate you sharing that and your candor in the response. It's really, really.
Well, it's important. You know, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this tonight. It's important stuff, and it'll all be in the book. I'm going to write this book on my career. I've had many people say, oh, you got to write this book. You got to write this book.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe this, Deb, but our time is already up. But I want to give you just a moment for some closing thoughts, if you could. If you would, just any final reflections. You've offered so much advice, and just really, it's been a joy to talk with you. But anything you'd like to say?
I'm trying to think about what it was that I had in my mind. That I didn't have a list, but I had general comments, and I think I've covered them all. So I will just say I'm appreciative for the honor, and thank you all for your time and your wonderful questions, because it's your questions that sort of bring out the memories and the answers. And so thank you for being a part of it. I'd like to thank the National Academy of Construction, and I'd like to thank Keith and Jane for all of their help in getting me ready for it.
Well, that's very gracious, and I too thank you, everyone with us, for showing up. It's really a pleasure and an honor to do this. We hope that you got a lot out of it, and we'll come back again for our next one next month. So, Deb, thank you so much. Hey,
Keith, one more thing.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions they would like to ask me personally, being they didn't want to put it forward tonight, or they want to stay in touch with me for any reason, you can get in touch with me by getting in touch through that website, and Jane will send out my contact information.
That is so generous. Thank you. And Jane will follow up with that for sure. So
thank you.
Thank you all for dialing in. And I know there's one more thing I can't forget to do here, and that's announce the winner of our gift from the National Academy, and that's randomly selected here, and that's Allie Stevens from the University of Wisconsin. So Allie, we'll be in touch with you via email, and we thank all the members of the National Academy of Construction. Their donations and gifts have made this possible. And again, Deb, it's been such a pleasure. Have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, Keith. Same to you and to everybody else.